a Redeemer, Jesus, God's own Son, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One.
Hi, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm not just a redneck. I'm actually a scientist. I have a PhD in physics, and one of my first jobs out of school was as a test engineer. So when I come to technical specifications related to fishing, I'm always saying, how can I measure that and confirm or know how well that's doing as a scientist? But as a redneck and as a teacher, I don't want to bring it all into a laboratory and create some specialized method that only experts with access to the finest equipment can use. I try and create a test or measurement system that students can use or that rednecks can use with stuff they likely already have. Now, one of the key things when you're measuring the strength of fishing line is some kind of accurate way to measure the force. And there's lots of ways to do this in a laboratory, and I've got laboratory force gauges and sensors and force plates and lots of different ways to do it. But most people don't have access to all that stuff, so I'm going to demonstrate it with a simple fishing scale. And this one happens to be it's a Feedback Sports scale, and I use it for fish, although it's sold for a variety of purposes. And a lot of fishing scales out there aren't really accurate enough for this kind of work. So the way that you tell for sure is you measure their accuracy with some kind of calibrated weight. And most stuff you have lying around, if you have a barbell that says 20 pounds or some kind of weight around the house, they don't even tend to be accurate enough for these purposes. So what I like to encourage people to do is take your test mass and measure it on some kind of certified or known accurate scale somewhere. And the scales that are used in most fishing tournaments are accurate enough for this purpose. The scales that are used at meat markets and grocery stores are usually accurate because they have money and somebody's coming around on a regular basis to ensure that those scales are accurate to much, much better than 1%. So you can get your calibration weight, know what its weight is, and then you can hang it from the scale you intend to use for this kind of experiment. And so you know how accurate your scale is. And this one has been validated with known test masses to be better than 1% accuracy every time it's been checked. So this one's good enough for the experiment today, which is testing the strength of different fishing lines. And this is not a hypothetical or a theoretical kind of experiment. I'm trying to make it very practical. So I've picked the uni knot because the uni knot is the knot that I really tie when I'm fishing. And I kind of settled on the uni knot both because when I first started buying Power Pro braid in the little packets, they suggested using new uni knots with Power Pro. I've also tested the uni knot with lots of different kinds of fluorocarbon and monofilament, and I can tie it quickly and get as much breaking strength out of the line as I can with other knots. And being able to tie it quickly when you're on the boat, lots of things are going on, is why I end up using the uni knot. Okay, so you need your scale, you need your fishing line, and this is 65-pound Power Pro, new, and you need to pick something to tie it to, and I don't know if you can see that very well. I picked the Gamakatsu 7/0 Octopus Offset J hook because this one's the one I use in real life. If you want to know really what your line is doing with what you're tying it to, I created an experiment that gets very close to that. So the procedure is to tie the uni knot to the hook, to hang the hook from the scale, and then this part gets a little tricky because you need something to pull on it with that's not going to be your weak spot. So what I recommend, and this is sort of a similar idea to what experts use when they're testing tensile strength of strings and line, but this is just a wooden dowel, might have been cut off from a shovel or a broom or something, and then I wrap a little electrical tape around it. So rather than tying a knot at this end, because if you tie a knot at this end, you have two knots, one at the hook end and then one at the pull end, and you're not sure which one's going to break. So by taking a dowel like this, wrapping some electrical tape so it doesn't slip, and then just wrapping the line around it 10 times or so, holding it with your finger, that's enough friction so that when you're pulling downward on this end, the knot's much more likely to fail at the hook end, and I bet in all our trials today the knot fails at the hook end rather than at the dowel or the pull end. Now, one other thing I should mention, if you're going to do these experiments, and I highly recommend it, is safety glasses of some kind. And I'm kind of a geeky guy, and I've got these big, thick polycarbonate lenses, so I put the glasses on, I put the hat on, I make sure I'm looking into the source, because when the string breaks, the hook can fly off, the string can whip out, you've got a little force there, so you don't want an injury potential to exist, so you want to make sure you're protecting your eyes especially. So today we're going to demonstrate this method with 3 different kinds of line. We've got some brand new 65-pound Power Pro, the normal moss green stuff. We've got some 30-pound, it's Power Pro Depth Hunter, so it changes color, and it's new right off the spool as well. And I couldn't find any new 80-pound in my supply today, except for what I already had on the reel. So this is an interesting experiment. I've had this 80-pound Power Pro on most of my fishing reels for about 5 years now. It's faded, but I tried to take enough off the front so it's, it would pass inspection other than being faded. It doesn't have any visible frays or nicks or things like that. So we're going to demonstrate the test with used 80-pound Power Pro, new 65-pound Power Pro, and new 30-pound Power Pro Depth Hunter. And we're going to tie uni knots carefully, how I usually tie them when I'm sitting in the fishing boat. And we're just going to pull downward. We're going to record the force on the scale every time, and then we're going to compute some averages and some uncertainties to try and get the math right. 65-pound Power Pro, test 1. $65-pound Power Pro, take 2. Okay, this summary table shows the results of the 5 trials measuring the breaking strength with 65-pound Power Pro. With the uni knot, we can see that the breaking strength varies between 39 and 48 point something pounds per trial, and that probably has more to do with our knot tying, getting the knot the same every time than other factors, but the mean breaking strength, we see down at the bottom, it's about 67% of the rated breaking strength, and with uncertainty plus or minus 2%. So that's actually consistent with what other people have measured with new Power Pro with the uni knot. 30-pound Power Pro Depth Hunter, test 1. Okay, well, repeating the trials with the 30-pound Power Pro Depth Hunter 5 times gives the results table shown here. You can see that the breaking strength varies from close to 19 pounds to a little bit over 25 pounds. The average breaking strength is almost 22 pounds, so that's about 73% of the rated breaking strength, with a standard error of the mean of close to 3%. So looking like we have a trend here. The uni knot, when tied how I tie it, creates a average breaking strength of about 70% of the Power Pro's original rating. Used and faded 80-pound Power Pro, take 1. All right, well, repeating the 5 trials on the used 80-pound Power Pro, it was well faded, about 5 years old. The results aren't really too surprising that it's weaker, but we find that the average breaking strength is just under 40 pounds, or a little less than half of the new rated breaking strength when we tie a uni knot in it, and the standard error of the mean, the uncertainty, is a little less than 2%. in that determination. So, I was kind of expecting that the used Power Pro was probably still a little stronger, closer to the new stuff, but guess I need to keep that in mind when I decide how often to change the line out on my reels. But still, 5 years and still having that braking strength with the Uni knot is probably better than most monofilament line, and certainly better than most fluorocarbons. I'm having to change out fluorocarbon leaders. Sometimes it's a single-use deal with a fluorocarbon leader. Sometimes I might get 4 or 5 uses out of them.
When I stand in glory, I will see His face, and there I'll serve my King forever in that holy place. Thank you, oh my Father, for giving us your Son and leaving your Spirit till the work on earth is done.